Imagine, just for a second, standing on a sweltering soccer pitch for, I don't know, 88 minutes.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a long time.
Right. And you are barely even touching the ball. You're essentially just doing aimless cardio out there in front of millions of screaming fans, and this is during a massively high-stakes World Cup knockout match.
It sounds like a nightmare, honestly.
Yeah, but now imagine doing that completely on purpose. Like, it's the exact meticulously orchestrated framework required for your team to actually win the game.
I mean, it sounds totally counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
We're so conditioned to think that the biggest stars, the guys on the posters, need to have the ball at their feet at all times to make any kind of impact.
Exactly. But today, we're taking a deep dive into a really fascinating stack of sources that basically upends that whole idea entirely.
Right.
We've got match reports, frantic Reddit threads from a huge 2026 World Cup round of 32 clash between Norway and Ivory Coast.
Which was an incredible game.
Oh, unbelievable. And we're pairing that with coaching notes from a championship-winning college tennis program. And strangely enough, a how-to guide for structuring a successful podcast.
It's quite the mix.
It is. And our mission today is to figure out what actually connects a lethal striker like Erling Haaland, a college tennis coach in Georgia, and, a content creator trying to grow an audience.
And the connective tissue there between all of those totally different things is the architecture of winning.
Right.
We are going to explore how rigorous structure, a really clear operating system, and a deeply ingrained team culture actually create the freedom to perform perfectly under immense pressure.
So whether you are sitting behind a microphone in a tiny home studio, or maybe you're trying to lead a corporate team through a rough quarter, or stepping onto a global stage in Dallas, Texas, this absolutely applies to you.
Definitely.
But before we get to the World Cup stuff, we really need to look at how high performers build their framework before the game or the recording even begins. And that brings us to Rob Cressy's ultimate podcast script template.
Yeah, so Cressy is this content creator whose entire philosophy really revolves around a highly disciplined workflow.
Like almost rigid, right?
Totally rigid.
Okay.
He argues that every single time you produce audio, it needs to follow the exact same structural skeleton.
Okay.
So it starts with intro music, followed immediately by a tightly scripted, maybe 3 to 10 seconds spoken intro, then a quick topic preview, the main body of the show, specific call to action, and finally the outro music.
See, I have to admit, when I first read that in the source material, I had some serious pushback.
Really?
Yeah, because, does all this intense structure actually kill creativity? It feels like if you tell a brilliant, spontaneous creator to just march through this rigid checklist, it sounds like putting an artist in a straitjacket.
And honestly, that is the most common fear people have when they try to implement any kind of system.
Yeah.
But Cressy insists on this one crucial twist.
Which is?
While the overarching structure is completely rigid, the actual body of the show should never be a word-for-word script.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it should just be a bullet point outline.
Okay, so you have a strict container, but the inside is fluid.
Exactly.
That actually makes me think of an actual skeleton, like bone structure.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Because a skeleton is, like, it's a rigid, unforgiving framework, but it doesn't restrict the body. Like, without a skeleton, you're just a puddle on the floor.
Right, yeah.
The skeleton is what actually supports the muscles and gives them the leverage to move freely, to run or to dance or whatever.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it.
Mm-hmm.
And Cressy basically uses this structure to build the creator's confidence.
Makes sense.
If you know your overarching architecture is rock solid, you don't waste precious mental energy trying to figure out what segment comes next,
They don't freeze up if you lose your train of thought.
Exactly. You just glance at the bullet point and execute. You stay in a state of flow. He actually links this back to the legendary football coach Nick Saban, who always preached that you have to be addicted to the daily process of winning.
Addicted to the process rather than obsessing over the final score.
Right. You trust the daily operating system.
Which flows perfectly into our second source, the Sport Fuels Life podcast featuring Coach Tom Rees.
Yeah, this was fascinating.
He is the head tennis coach at Georgia Gwinnett College. And just for those who might not follow college sports deeply, they compete in the NAIA.
Which is the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics.
Right. It's an association of smaller colleges, but the level of competition is incredibly fierce. And Coach Rees has actually led his program to a national championship.
Which is huge.
Huge. And he has this philosophy that really stuck out to me. He says, quote, "Culture is what happens when the coach isn't there."
It's such a great line. It really forces you to rethink what leadership actually is.
Yeah.
Because Coach Rees argues that you can't simply mandate a winning culture from the top down.
Can't just shout rules at people.
Exactly. You have to earn the athlete's buy-in.
Yeah.
The way you do that is by meticulously explaining the why behind every single rule or process.
Well, why is so important.
Yeah, you give the players a voice in shaping that system, and you rely really heavily on positive reinforcement.
But he also emphasizes that just having a good mindset isn't enough on its own, right?
Correct. Rees makes this very compelling point that true confidence is built through action.
Action.
Yes, you can't just meditate your way into believing in a system. You have to physically execute the framework over and over until the muscle memory takes over.
So the action becomes the culture.
Exactly. That is how a rule transforms into an actual team culture.
So the big takeaway here for you, listening right now, isn't just to write down a list of rigid rules for your team or your big creative project. It's that rules only transform into a reliable culture when you attach a clear why to them and when you build that muscle memory through action.
Spot on.
But I mean, building that skeleton in a cozy podcast studio or on a practice tennis court is one thing. Doing it with 11 players in the 100-degree heat of Dallas, Texas, against a world-class opponent, that is entirely different.
A whole different ballgame. Literally.
Literally. So let's head to the 2026 World Cup. Round of 32. Ivory Coast versus Norway.
This match is the ultimate test of everything we just talked about.
Yeah.
Because we have two vastly different footballing cultures just colliding head on.
Okay, set the stage for us.
So Ivory Coast, managed by Immerse Faye, came into this game with a very rigid 4-1-4-1 formation.
Wait, before we go further, break down that 4-1-4-1 for those of us who don't spend our weekends analyzing tactical heat maps.
Sure.
What does that actually look like on the grass?
Okay, think of it as a series of physical barricades.
Yeah.
You have your 4 defenders at the back. Then, crucially, you have one defensive midfielder, in this case, either Ibrahim Sangare or Franck Kessie. And they act as a literal bouncer in the space just in front of the defense.
Oh, a bouncer. I like that.
Yeah, they just clean everything up. And then ahead of them is another flat line of 4 midfielders, and finally one lone striker up top.
Wow, so that bouncer role is key.
It is. The entire purpose of that role is to act as a physical wall, basically designed to clog up the middle of the field, stifle the opponent's creativity, and then launch these incredibly swift counterattacks.
So it's a framework built purely on physical dominance and disruption?
Very much so.
But Norway, under their manager Stale Solbakken, they had a totally different operating system. They relied on a 4-3-3.
Yes, and a 4-3-3 is much more expansive. You have 4 defenders, 3 midfielders, and 3 forwards spread out across the front line.
Okay.
It's basically a geometric setup designed for heavy ball possession and high-intensity pressing to win the ball back quickly. But what makes Norway so fascinating here isn't just the geometry on the pitch.
Right.
It's their extreme, almost radical commitment to their overarching process.
We absolutely have to talk about what they did in their final group stage game against France, because France is one of the highest-ranked teams in the world.
Yeah, a powerhouse.
And going into that game, Norway basically just threw in the towel.
Yeah.
They willingly absorbed a brutal 4-1 loss.
Which fans hated, I'm sure.
I mean, yeah. And why did they do it? Because Solbakken decided to entirely rest his 2 biggest superstars, Erling Haaland and Martin Ødegaard. He wanted to guarantee they were physically primed for this specific knockout match against Ivory Coast.
Which is the ultimate manifestation of being addicted to the process over the immediate result.
It's crazy, though.
It is. Solbakken sacrificed short-term glory, and he undoubtedly took a massive amount of criticism from the Norwegian press for it.
Yeah.
Because he just trusted the math of his long-term framework.
It's like a college student intentionally bombing a midterm exam because they know the final is worth 80% of their grade, and they desperately need to sleep so their brain actually functions on the day it matters most.
That's a great way to put it.
It's a huge calculated risk.
It is, but the tactical plan was crystal clear. By resting Ødegaard and Haaland, Norway had the 2 most vital pieces of their skeleton fully energized.
Ready to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The tactical plan against Ivory Coast was highly specific. Ødegaard was instructed to constantly drop deep into the midfield. His job was basically to act as bait.
Baiting the bouncer.
Yes. By dropping deep into pockets of space, Ødegaard forces Franck Kessie to step out of his designated defensive zone to cover him.
Which ruins the barricade.
Exactly. When Kessie steps up, the Ivory Coast's rigid defensive wall suddenly has a huge crack in it. That movement creates passing lanes and stretches the entire back line, leaving huge pockets of space for Erling Haaland to exploit.
So the architecture is in place, the trap is completely set, but, as Mike Tyson famously said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Oh, true.
And as the game kicks off in Dallas, we finally get to see what happens when a pristine, highly theorized system collides with human unpredictability.
And man, the first half was incredibly tense. Ivory Coast came out pushing extremely hard. They used that physical midfield to their advantage, penetrating the Norwegian defense multiple times, but they just couldn't find the finishing touch.
Right.
And then in the 39th minute, Norway's trap just snapped shut.
It was a gorgeous piece of tactical execution. Ødegaard, doing exactly what the framework asked of him, drops deep, finds a pocket of space, and threads a pass to Antonio Nusa.
He was beautiful.
And then Nusa jinks inside, completely bypassing that disrupted defensive line, and unleashes a stunning curler right into the top corner. 1-0 Norway.
But here is where the chess match escalates. Because Ivory Coast's coach, Faye, he realizes his bouncer strategy is being exploited.
He sees the crack.
Yeah. So in the 60th minute, he adapts. He brings on the Manchester United winger Amad Diallo. And Diallo immediately embodies Coach Rees's tennis philosophy.
That confidence is built through immediate physical action.
Exactly. He didn't wait for the game to come to him. Almost immediately after stepping onto the pitch, Diallo sprints back and makes this massive, desperate defensive play, blocking a goal-bound shot from Norway's Torbjørn Hegem right on his own goal line.
Incredible.
And that single decisive action just sparks a psychological shift in the entire Ivory Coast squad. Suddenly they have life.
The momentum totally shifts.
Completely. And in the 74th minute, it pays off on the offensive end. Diallo plays a slick, instinctive 1-2 pass with Nicolas Pepe, dances past two Norwegian defenders in the box, and scores this exquisite equalizer. So now it's 1-1.
See, this is the exact moment I want to pause and dig into, because when Diallo equalizes, it feels like Ivory Coast completely abandons their rigid 4-1-4-1 structure and just relies on pure, raw instinct and individual brilliance.
Right.
But how does a highly systematic, process-oriented team like Norway respond when the momentum completely flips against them? Because instinct screams at you to panic, to abandon the plan, and to try and play hero ball.
And that instinct is exactly what ruins businesses and sports teams alike. But for the answer to how Norway handled it, the Reddit match threads from fans analyzing the game in real time provide a really brilliant psychological breakdown.
Yeah, the fans on Reddit noticed a massive shift in body language, didn't they?
They did. They noted that after scoring that beautiful equalizer, Ivory Coast actually seemed to relax. Having achieved the high of the goal, they dropped their intensity and were just content to sit deep again. They basically lost that aggressive, action-oriented culture that Diallo had sparked.
Wow. And Norway?
Norway did the exact opposite.
They leaned entirely into the skeleton.
Precisely. They didn't panic. No single player started playing hero ball or taking wild, desperate shots from midfield. They trusted their tactical outline, their bullet points, if we go back to the Rob Cressy analogy, to guide them safely out of the chaos and back into a state of flow.
I mean, think about the last time a major project went sideways at your job, or a client suddenly changed their demands at the 11th hour. Did everyone in the office panic and start pointing fingers, or did you fall back on a reliable operating system?
That's a great question.
Norway trusted the system. Which brings us to the climax of the game. It's tied 1-1. The heat is bearing down in Dallas, the minutes are ticking away toward extra time, and the match is ultimately decided by the team whose underlying architecture just refused to break.
And the really interesting thing is, the engine of that architecture wasn't Highland or Ødegaard.
Right.
It was Norway's central midfielder, Patrick Berg. He actually ended up earning an 8.0 out of 10 rating and man of the match honors.
Unbelievable.
He was everywhere, endlessly executing all the unglamorous parts of the process.
So in the 86th minute, the absolute peak of pressure, the system pays off. Substitute Oscar Bob threads a pass to Berg, and Berg makes this incredibly fluid third-man run. Now, help me out here. What exactly is a third-man run in football geometry?
Okay, it's a beautifully orchestrated puzzle piece. Imagine player A has the ball. Player B makes a dummy run, basically sprinting into a space specifically to drag a defender away with him.
Okay.
Because that defender follows player B. A new, totally empty pocket of space opens up on the field.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And then player C, the third man, which in this case is Patrick Berg, runs completely unimpeded into that newly created empty space to receive the pass from player A.
That requires immense trust, right?
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Because you are moving off the ball,
Yeah.
just assuming your teammates will do their exact jobs perfectly.
So Berg runs into that empty space, drawing two panicked Ivorian defenders toward him. And because Berg pulls those last two defenders, who is suddenly standing completely unmarked in acres of space inside the penalty box,
Erling Haaland.
Berg slides the ball over, and Haaland just calmly taps it home for the 2-1 lead.
It's just devastating.
It is, and the Reddit threads went absolutely crazy over Haaland's performance in this match. They were joking about his absurd, almost monk-like discipline. One user perfectly summarized his entire 90 minutes as, quote, 88 minutes of aimless cardio, 4 touches, 3 shots, 2 goals.
Which sounds like a criticism, right? But it's actually the highest praise possible for a tactical system.
Right.
Haaland didn't throw a tantrum when he wasn't getting the ball for long stretches. He stayed within his designated zone in the structure. He trusted that if Berg, Ødegaard, and the rest of the team executed their roles, the geometry of the pitch would eventually shift in his favor.
Now, Ivory Coast fought to the bitter end. I mean, Amad Diallo even forced a massive leaping save from the Norwegian goalkeeper Arjen Nyland, deep into stoppage time from a free kick.
Yeah, that was a close one.
But the skeleton held. Norway advanced to face Brazil. And thinking about Haaland doing 88 minutes of cardio, he is exactly like the call to action in Rob Cressy's podcast template.
Oh, wow. That is a fascinating parallel.
Think about it. You don't need a podcast host screaming the call to action for the entire length of the show.
No, that would be terrible.
Right. And you don't need Haaland dropping into the midfield and touching the ball 50 times a game. You just need him to stay in his designated spot at the very end of the outline.
Yeah.
And when the critical moment arrives, after the rest of the framework has done its job, he flawlessly executes the finish to make the entire endeavor successful.
And that is really the ultimate takeaway here. While Haaland inevitably gets the front page headlines and the viral highlights, the victory genuinely belongs to the unseen architecture.
The underlying structure.
Yeah. It belongs to Patrick Berg's relentless, unglamorous midfield geometry. It belongs to manager Ståle Solbakken highly calculated risk to sacrifice the France game just to preserve his physical assets. And it belongs to the deeply ingrained team culture that prevented a psychological collapse when Ivory Coast tied the game.
So true.
True. Sustainable success is a collective ecosystem where rigorous preparation meets flawless execution.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's bring all this directly back to you, the listener. Whether you are prepping for a massive boardroom presentation, or you're launching a new creative endeavor, or you're just trying to lead a team through a difficult season, the lesson from this stack of sources is incredibly clear.
Establish your script.
Exactly. Establish your script. Create your outline, but keep it flexible enough so you can stay in flow. Make sure you meticulously explain the why to your collaborators so they actually buy into the vision. And finally, build a culture of action that acts as your safety net, your skeleton, when the pressure inevitably hits and the momentum shifts against you.
It's powerful stuff. But, I do want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over as you go about your day.
Let's hear it.
We spent a lot of time discussing Coach Tom Rees's assertion that true culture is what happens when the coach isn't there, when nobody is watching.
Right.
But look at our modern lives. In our highly connected, hyper-digital world, where performance metrics, live Reddit threads, social media feedback, and constant communication are quite literally vibrating in our pockets all day long, is the coach or the audience ever truly absent?
Oh, wow.
How do we build authentic, self-sustaining confidence when we feel like we are always constantly being watched?
Man, that is a heavy thought to carry with you. Because at the end of the day, trusting the framework you've built when the entire world is watching your every move,
Yeah.
that might just be the hardest architecture of all to maintain.